Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my shop, and thank you for your patience if you're joining me. Sorry, I'm starting about 4 minutes late, it looks like. And the primary reason is having a real audio issue. And first of all, what happened is, you know the wheel that they have on the Corsair keyboards that you can spin to, or you shouldn't spin, I found out, to change the volume? What happens is if you spin it, that apparently just jams the input cue so hard that that's all it will ever receive until I had to log all the way back out and then log all the way back in. So, first thing I want to check is that audio is good, so please let me know in the comments if it is, and because one of the things I have done is I have boosted my audio levels by a few dB because apparently folks were saying that they were still low, even though I was peeking into the yellow and red in the app itself, so I wasn't sure what to expect in terms of quality for you guys. So please let me know if it's too high, if it's clipping, anything like that, if it's too low, and I will check comments as often as I can. So what I'm going to do is, once I get into the code, I'm going to work away diligently on the code, and I won't be able to check comments at the same time. So in the last one I did, there were these annoying lulls where I'm building or compiling or uploading or flashing, and that's the time I'm going to take to go look at the comments. So if you bear with me, I will check comments periodically, but I will check them much more closely when I have that time to look in between builds. So let's see what else. I also moved the insulator. Let's see which view I'm using. Make sure that I am looking at the same view as you, which I appear to be, so that right above me are the insulators, which are now doing a flame effect. So hopefully that's not too annoying. I'm just going to let that run. Oh, no, they're doing a spinning reel, the old IBM disc packs. They're not disc packs, the tape reels. That's what this is supposed to look like. I don't know if it does or not. You be the judge. That's what I was going for anyway. It's actually surprisingly complicated code, because it has to keep track of which direction and how fast and when to reverse and all kinds of goofiness. But we'll take a look at that later as well if we have time. I added this blue border around me that you can see here to just isolate me from the actual editor. And let me bring up the actual source files that we're going to be working on today. Down in the effects, and what else we're going to be at. Oh, another great thing here is I installed the zoom extension, so I can zoom in and give you a much better view when I have the available screen real estate to do so. Let's see, what file do we want to be in? We want to be in temp effect. Excellent. This is where we're going to be working. So, another thing I did is I switched to the H264 encoder. I was using the AMD hardware encoder, and both were under like 1% of GPU versus 1% of CPU. So apparently the machine's not stressed at all doing the encoding. I guess I'm using 20 kilobits. And that's been working pretty well so far, so I'm happy with that. The one thing I don't know is if I play music and it matches content ID, which I expect it will because if it's copyrighted music, then any funds, from advertising or banner ads that come up during this go to the people that produce the music, which is totally fair. If I'm going to use their music, all power to them. The problem is there are some artists that just say, no, my music is much too important to be used, and I block it. And those artists, if you do that, you can't show your video like in the United States at all. So you find that out when you upload it, and YouTube post-processes it and does its content ID check. And so eventually you figure out which artists allow their music to be used and which ones do not. But in a live stream, I think it can either just warn you or then take your stream down. So I've got to make sure that I've got the actual window here. I hope it would let me know in the main Go Live console here in YouTube that something is amiss if it doesn't like audio that I happen to play. We'll find out. If I just disappear in the middle of a song or if it mutes the audio, let me know in the comments, because I assume that's what's going on. So what else we got? The empty live stream. So after I did the live stream on the Ghidra hacking, if you had a chance to catch that one, which was it was an education, let's say, because I've never done one where I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I've used Ghidra at least once. I've gone through it, and I even looked at the Prime Civ code at least once to kind of know where it was going, because I didn't want to take you down some pointless path if you were watching the live stream. Somehow, when I got up, I actually got up pretty early, and I got up at 4:30 the next morning, and I checked, and there was a 2.5-hour live stream already in progress that had started at like 2 a.m., which was long after I went to bed, so I never did quite figure out what happened. When I checked, all the footage just seemed to be of the red toolbox behind me in a dark room, and I guess people had a good time in chat talking about languages and arguing in there. But so my apologies, but now I'm kind of sad that I missed the conversation. One other thing I'm doing different today is normally I have an aperture light, and it's this big thing with a diffuser on it, and it's a great light. However, it is also huge, and I got to drag it out and all that. So I'm just using a boom light, not a boom light, I can't show you because it's out of the picture, obviously, but you know, it's like a magnifying glass with a little ring built in it. You open the door and you look through it, and on a Luxo Junior kind of crane thing. One of those. That's what I'm using for a light today. And what else we got going on? The fire fans, they're already running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the effects in the lights behind me, because when I rebooted to fix the keyboard issue, that took down my machine as well. I can move this window over here so we're not all staring at it. And now we can look at some code. First thing I'm going to do is compile this, make sure it actually builds. Because what I'm going to do is I have two skeletal effects, and I'm going to flesh them out as we go. This should not work because I don't have a draw method yet, actually. But let me add a draw method. Oh, it did work. Oh, I guess I'm not actually instantiating them yet. So because these have abstract base members, this is the minimum that you should have to define to use one of these effects. Now, if I go to the effects.cpp, which is where they're referenced, oh yeah, they were commented out. I think the first one we'll do is the VU meter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build, you guessed it, a VU meter. It's going to go from red through yellow to green, and it will use the entire set of insulators as the VU graph. Should look kind of interesting or annoying. I don't know. We'll find out. That's the beauty of it. Sometimes you do something, you think it's going to look amazing, and nope, it really doesn't. And then sometimes you're just goofing around, and someone goes, ooh, that's pretty. But let's comment these other ones out for now. Let's see, I also need another window here somewhere. Let's go to where this is defined and do a quick build, and I will check the comments. Let's see. Can we still count on the software episode for the Atomic Lamp? Yeah, I'd like to. I didn't get as much response on the Atomic Lamp episode as I thought I would. I thought that there would be some interest in it from the people that watched the, I don't even know what you call that type episode, but the guys who, you know, restore a scooter for an hour and you watch and he's scrubbing each bolt and all that. And I thought perhaps the assembly process would appeal to folks on that kind of level, but it was probably one of the lowest viewed episodes in a long time, and it was a lot of work. So I will do the software episode, and let me make a note of that actually so that I do not forget, because I am terrible at forgetting these things. This is my cool pen my wife got me for Christmas, and it is like fully machined. It's billet. I can't really show you how heavy it is on a video, but hey. Let's see, lamp episode 2. All right, back to the code. Everything uploaded. Did it? Because I'm still seeing a fire effect. Oops, pardon me. Is all we left in to define? No, so what the heck, man? Oh, I think I just did build and not upload. That would do it. Let's see, planning on posting your code? Yeah, so that's another big issue I want to talk about. I have this code base that I've been working on for about 2 years, almost 3 years off and on, and it does a lot of things. It does all the audio processing, it does spectrum analysis, the FFT, all of that. It does the beat detection. It also does all the drawing, and it does all the talking to the up to 8 channels of LEDs that can be over 1,000 LEDs each. It can do that at 30 frames a second, and it's built on the remote control code, or the remote control hardware in the SP32, which is used to generate square wave pulses. And so the fast LED library that I'm using allows you to harness that for up to 8 channels. So at the low level, I'm using fast LED to talk to the LED strip, which is really handy. I'm also using their color model because they have a CRGB class, which you'll see me use here quite a bit, and it's a 24-bit color class. And they have the operators defined for adding, multiplying, and that kind of thing for color. Anyway, the big piece of this code is actually what's going on behind me in these windows. So I have another app here, which I can't, unfortunately, because of the way OBS, I can't just drag it on top because it's a specific window is being broadcast, which is Visual Code. But there is another window on my desktop, which is the server software that has how many channels? I think it's got about 20 channels right now of different LED strips around the house. Some are out on the pool house, and they do the fireworks show or the Christmas lights. Many of them are ambient lighting in my shop. A bunch of them are behind me here. The lamp is one of them. So all these effects are actually running in a C# app on Windows, or they can even run on Raspberry Pi. And I've ported it to my Synology NAS as well. So once you get it on Linux and in a Docker container, it's pretty easy to port anywhere. So I did that, work to get it working in Docker. And once I had it there, then you can run it anywhere. And so that runs and it pushes over Wi-Fi all the color bits. It draws the show as if it's a giant canvas on the PC or whatever hardware it's running on, and it renders it as, it could be a 1000 by 1 bitmap of firework going sideways, which actually looks pretty cool. And then 30 times a second or whatever you set for a frame rate, up to about 100, but I mean, you don't want to abuse your Wi-Fi too badly. You can then push all that color data out and it all just happens magically. And what happens, importantly, is that everything is generated in the future. So right now, I think everything is about 2 seconds out in the future because each chip has enough memory on it to do a frame buffer for about 60 frames, 48 to 60 frames, depending on what things I'm linking with. So with enough RAM left over, you use any leftover RAM as a frame buffer, and things are time-stamped in the future, and each client chip just waits until the frames expire in the now present, draws it, and throws the frame away. So it's always buffered up to 2 seconds into the future. And this is something that I think makes it a fair bit different from, I think there are solutions like WLED, which I got to plead ignorance. I've never used WLED because I think it kind of came out around the same time or after I started writing mine, so I was just always playing with mine. So I should probably figure out what WLED does. But if it does the future buffering and the time stamping, that's cool, because the challenge with that is if you have a set of strips and then another set of strips and then another set of strips and they're not interconnected in any way other than logically behind the scenes at the server side, in my case, things can span those strips because you can have a beat effect or a firework cross them and they're perfectly synchronized down to the millisecond because they're all using an SNTP software client to get their time synchronized down to about the millisecond. Or I think it's like 3 to 4 milliseconds, worst case. But it still looks pretty good. The only thing you can't do is remote audio effects. So audio effects are always done locally on the ESP32. So you have a balance of effects. An effect I should back up a little bit. An effect can be done locally, like we're going to do with the VU class, or it can just not be, it can be done on the server side. And what this app that we're actually running does is look, is there data coming in from the server that I should draw? No. Then I'll look, do I have any local effects I could draw? Well, yeah, and I'll draw one of those. So we are the local effects it draws in lieu of Wi-Fi data. Let me take a look at chat. How are we doing? Did I write my own FFTs? No, I actually use Arduino FFT in this case. And it's pretty simple. You call FFT and then complex to real and the magnitude function. I'm not a big math guy, so there's a bunch, there's Boxcar and Hammond, and there's a bunch of algorithms you can use. Maybe later we'll go through what I'm doing because I would really like to know how to improve it. I want to get it so that when I do a frequency analyze or frequency generator sweep across the audio spectrum, that I get a really narrow peak. And I get kind of a bleh thing right now where it's kind of spread out. And so you'll see if you've got 3 bars, it'll cross 1 bar a lot, and it's just kind of a fat ramp. I'd like it to be a much tighter fit to the audio band. Let's see, the fire effect has the effect of looking like a bunch of reverse loading icons. Hey, why did it stop? Let me go see if I can figure out why the thing stopped. Oh, because we uploaded a blank effect, that is why. So let's do something in our blank effect. So just to make sure we're working, let's just draw it red. Or not red, let's do red. I hate red because it looks like the fire effect. So it's 0 to 450. Oh yeah, I never said about posting my code. I would love to post the code. It's a huge ass amount of code. I've got the C# server code. I've got the C++ client code that we're going to work in today. I've got the React UI code. I got a ton of code. It's all on GitHub. It's already ready to go. I just don't want to have worked on it for 3 years and then release it, then it winds up on some Chinese Giga or coming out of anywhere that they're not respectful of copyright. Not to pick on China, but that seems to be kind of the narrative of late. So I will pick on them. But I don't know. It's not like I'm going to get rich off LED software. So I'm happy to release it and let everybody play with it, but I kind of like it used for non-commercial use unless people get permission first. So that's how I'm going to license it, is do what you want with it, just don't sell it on your behalf. Don't sell it without talking to me first. If you know what license model fits that, by the way, the don't sell it commercially unless you talk to me first thing and get permission, let me know. I thought maybe the MIT license, one of the college licenses, might be closest, but. So. To draw a VU meter, what we really want to do is first abstract away the notion of drawing a single pixel. So imagine that it is n pixels long, and we'll say 32. We want to go draw pixel number 16, then 17, then 18, 19, 20, and so on. We're going to say here's a position, here's a color, and maybe here's a fade amount, or maybe time. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but yeah, we'll do an integer fade. Let me write the prototype, and it'll make more sense. Draw VU pixels. At what position? We'll say integer I. We'll say integer fade by. Because I want the pixel, you know, how the peak should like stay for a while and then boom, fade out. I think that's pretty easy to do. We'll do that. And I don't want to be just constrained to the whole red, green, blue thing, so we'll say give me a palette. Pull a color out of that palette. And we'll use the old STL map function. I have a map double that I could use as well, but hey, this should probably work. I'm trying to use the standard stuff wherever I can. And then we'll fade that by the fade amount. And then we're just going to do a set pixel at that index of that color. So we're going to start to draw it by zeroing everything out. So we start with just a simple black empty canvas. I have tried drawing VU meters in the past where you fade them out, but they look kind of, I don't know how to describe it, kind of mushy. I like the crispness of having it render every time and fall back at full brightness, but fall back instead of, you don't want it to go up and fade out. At least I don't think that's as satisfying. I like to go, it's like appear at the peak that it hits and then fade back, not out. Well, yeah, that makes sense. I think you know what I mean. If you don't, post it in the comments. Do you still monitor the join request to the Dave PL Face group? Oh, you know, I have not been looking at that Facebook group for a while because it didn't get much traction. But yeah, I do actually still look at it periodically, like once a month. What I should do is when I post a video, I will then make sure I post it in the group and check traffic at that point, and if not, kill the thing mercifully. But good point. Thank you very much. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time taking notes because that would really make for uninteresting content. Man takes notes, film at 11. So we won't be doing that. But what I will be doing is keeping track of a static variable, which is going to be the peak that we've seen. So it's going to be the peak VU, and I'll call it Y, even though it could be X or Y. It's just whichever direction you're thinking of drawing in. And I'm going to also keep track of how long ago that was. Or not how long ago, but when that occurred. And that's how I'll know how much to fade it out. I don't ever know how to spell occurred, how many C's and R's are in that thing. And we never want to fade by more than 255. Can we fade by 256? No, I'll say 255. So if there is a peak, then we need to know how much that peak. This is the peak that when you go up and it falls back, it leaves the one pixel, and we're going to fade that pixel out. And we got to figure out how much we're gonna fade that out first. And it's going to be a ratio of the max fade times how long ago it was. I would say millis minus ms peak VU. Oh, it's just kind of gross. It's like once you've bitten off floating point math in your project, just use it. The instructions aren't that bad, so it's like the libraries are kind of a hit, but let's see. At least that could be old news. I have no idea in a current project if there's even any hit, because it's not like you can buy a 487 separate from a 486 these days. I think I need an extra set of parentheses here somewhere to be safe. Now I have a palette already predefined, handily called View Palette Green. And I have a blue one too, as you might guess from that expansion, but we won't be using the blue one. So that's the peak. The number of bars we want to draw, if you think of a VU meter in terms of the old LED of bars stack, probably shouldn't switch here. Is there any reason? This will take some explaining, so just bear with me. Actually, no, that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the current VU meter, which is stored in a global variable by the audio code, and we're going to take the minimum range and the maximum range, and we're going to map that so that we're really only showing from the minimum up. So we're cutting the noise floor off, basically, so that you're not always, if it's halfway noisy, you're not always drawing the green bar half full. That's kind of my intent. I think that will probably work. And we'll say if bars is greater than the old peak, we'll say now is when the peak occurred. Sorry, I'm not putting comments in. I'm not that fast of a typer live when people are watching. I tend to make a lot of mistakes, so as you see by all the backing up. So my comments will be live, like Bill O'Reilly's. Peak VU greater than millis per second. And that's when the peak goes away. So it's 1 second. That will hold the peak for 1 second. I should probably put times 1.0 in here, but that'll be our little secret, as Bob Ross would say. This is a lot to bite off in one visual chunk here. Odds of my code working first time, pretty low, but we'll see. Let's code review it together. So I peak when it happened, start out black. That's the amount that we can fade. If there is a peak, should this be greater than or equal to 0? No, I'll say if it's 0, that's not even a real peak. And that sort of solves that problem. The fade is the maximum fade you could have multiplied by a fraction, which is the number of milliseconds that have elapsed divided by millis per second, which gives you a fractional number of seconds times the fade. Yeah, unless it's if this happened, you have had a situation where you got called less than once per second, it would be bad mojo. So we could probably put a Yeah, let's do it. I could have checked for 1.0, but this should do the same thing. And we'll draw VU pixels at the peak point, faded out by the amount that we just determined in the green palette. Then we're going to say bars, which is the number of pixels we're going to draw, as the actual VU meter is a map from using GVU value from here to here to from 1 to 1 less the number of LEDs we could have. So if we have 5 LEDs, this will give me 1 through 4. I don't want 0 through 4 because then you just get time when your VU meter turns off. And I want to always have the 1 pixel anchored on the bottom. Now if bars is greater than the old peak that we had, then we're going, I should probably say greater than or equal to, because that way we'll reset the peak. If you get the same peak again, right? That makes sense to me. Happened now, and it happened at this many bars. Otherwise, if more than 1 second has occurred, clear out the peak. All right. Let me see if this compiles and check some comments. My keyboard is Dave punching. I am punching very hard my Corsair RGB keyboard. It compiled first try. No, it's kind of cheating because my editor checks for errors, so. Well, that's not cheating, but it linked. It doesn't link the code, man. I linked that all on my own. Let's see. I'm going to run Spotify. Well, that is happening. Super multitasking, man. Looks like I'm doing nothing at all while you're sitting there watching me just going, what? There we go. Hey, look, something's happening. It's very peaky, though. Very peaky. Can you see it? Let me check the... Yeah, I believe you can. So that's not quite right. That's not what I wanted. I'm afraid it could be this map value here. We're going to map the VU from the minimum VU up to the peak VU, which I assume is the maximum ever. Because if I did max VU, it would be way too much here. What if I can cheat here? Let's cheat a little. Serial monitor. Come on, tell me the current VU, please. I bet it does. I put that in there. It should still be there. There we go. All right, so we see we don't need to be up to some huge value, but we can be mapping up to, oh, I bet 150. So let's do that. Dirty hack. All right. So you can tell it's live because it didn't really work first try. Well, I mean, it did, but it's too dancey or too intense for my liking. And the fade back seemed really, really fast. That's better. The feedback is really fast, though. Sorry, I'll try not to clap into the microphone and drive you crazy. So it's working, but why is my feedback not working? Let's see. And this is not something I'm going to stare at, so. So let me look at this fade. What am I doing? Maximum fade, 255. Fade is currently equal to the milliseconds less. So why is my fade? No, this is fine. This is all fine. We need to dampen this somehow. But I kind of thought it was dampened on its own. What's the easiest way to dampen this? Or do we even want to do that? I don't know if that's interesting enough to do live. It would look a lot better if we did. Well, let's try it. Let's try it. If I get it right the first couple tries, we'll I'll just add an int to keep track of last. Once it's finally decided on a bars value, we're going to try saying I can't hard code like that. Hang on, constant weight equals 10. Not sure this is going to work the way I think it will, but what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to take the last value of bars, whatever it was last time. I'm going to multiply that by, we'll say 10, and then I'm going to add the current value. And I'm going to divide that as if they were all the current value, or all the last value. Meaning I'm trying to keep it at the last, and the current value kind of has to pull at it. So it's like a weighted average. I don't think it's really a weighted average, but it might dampen it somewhat. We'll see what happens. Oh yeah, probably the lights are flickering. Yeah, it's kind of annoying, sorry. Careful with the spikes. What is that, some kind of Tempest reference? I'm not sure what that is. It sounds like a Tempest reference. All right, uploading. Let's see what we get. I think we're getting a reboot. Am I dividing by 0? Am I going to guess that I'm dividing by 0 here? What's my fault? Integer divided by 0. I'm a winner. Because last starts out as 0, right? And that's not very smart. I don't think I can initialize it to millis. So I have a constructor here anywhere. I mean, if you weren't here, I would do that. Because it's going to take one pass to pull it up, so I don't care if it starts near 0. Is that okay? Could anything else ever cause it to be 0? No, my weight's non-zero. If last is non-zero, which will always be set to millis after this point. Last equals bars. Bars is always 1. Oh yeah, I keep thinking it's millis, but it's not. It's the number of bars. I'm not keeping track of the time. I'm keeping track of the number of bars. So this is actually fine and cool because I'm mapping it to from 1 up, right? Which means I'll never divide by 0. It's kind of lame to assume that you'll never do it. I think I should probably enforce that, but I just got min and max backwards too. I'll like type it in, add it, trivial change. Don't even need to test it and get it totally backwards every time. All right, what do we get? Anything? Crashes, reboots, colors, anything? What on earth? Well, I'm going to move on to the next effect because I've obviously hooped myself so badly here that I'm not even seeing it. If last starts out as 1 and it never goes to 0, all right, anybody know how it goes to 0? Come on, I need you to help me. Let's see. Give myself like 30 seconds. If I don't see it, we're going to go on to a different effect because there's no point in watching me stare at this thing all afternoon. Last equals bars. And the bars is mapped from 1 up. Oh, the reason I'm assigning bars twice in a row is because bars is used in its own calculation here. So what I did was I said take the last value, multiply that by 10, and then add in bars, and then divide that by as if we had 11 of the last value. And then I save that as the last value. Can that be 0? Well, if this is 0, then this becomes 0. And we save 0 as the last. So what we should be doing is this afterwards. I believe that is the problem. Bars is now going to be, if I get min and max right, at least 1 no matter what we do above, which is kind of what I'm looking for. Pardon me as you watch me flail and debug. Watching somebody debug is not that interesting because most of it's thinking. And I don't know if I remember to talk out loud. It's hard to narrate debugging. But if you go to interview in a tech job like at Microsoft years ago, I don't know how they do it now, but you didn't have to debug much unless you had a bug in your own code. So let's say you guy said reverse a linked list. And you wrote your code, but you did something wrong in your edge case. And he said, you've got a bug. Now you're standing there at a whiteboard with a marker and an eraser, and a dude says your code has a bug, and it's kind of like I feel exactly right now because it's my code too. Hey, it's still falling back really way too fast, so I'm not going to chase that one any further, but that's kind of different. What's another simple effect? You know what I should do is actually show you some of the base effects. Instead of writing a new effect, I should show you how some of this effect works so that, let's go to one that is a little more functional. Let's say tape reel effect. Sure. Well, no, that one doesn't do beats. Let's do one that does music. Insulator color beat. Palette reel. I like this one, I think. This is the one that I made that looks, in my mind, like the glass is melting. I'll show you what I mean. I don't know how it looks on video. What it is, I set a base purple based on VU, and I've got everything dialed way back here. So I think normally the brightness on an LED strip is set to 255, and then that's just 1, so it scales by 1. And then for this, I've got it set down to 32 or 16 over 255, just so the camera doesn't freak out from the brightness, because the dynamic range on a webcam is a tiny, tiny fraction of the human eye, apparently. All right. Need some music here somehow. I don't want to hit play because it'll probably start randomly playing some video. Let's see if I can get something going here. I've got bass. Now, for some reason, oh no, you're getting something. All right, working well enough. We'll go have a look at this effect. Let me close this. So this effect is going to inherit from 2 base classes, one being a particle system effect, which is reasonably complicated, and let me know in the comments if you want me to recompile to something less annoying. I don't know, it's not that bad, I guess. Let me know if it's too distracting. Anyway, the base effects are a particle system. Everything that you see appearing here, the spinning disk that appears and fades out, does it fade out or disappear? Yeah, it fades out. That is a particle in my case. And so just like a star and some of the other effects, it tracks its state, and it tracks its lifetime, fades out over time, moves over time, that kind of thing. And we can take a look at that. But the beat effect is probably the more interesting thing right now. If we go look at beat effect base, it inherits from LED strip effect. I'm just going to jump in here really briefly to show you that LED strip effect is primarily things like, how many LEDs do you have? Give me a random rainbow color. Helper functions, that kind of thing. Fill it with a solid color, fill it with a rainbow, fade a pixel to black, set all the pixels to something, so some real low-level drawing stuff, set pixels. It handles talking to the actual graphics interface. I've got it abstracted away so that you can draw to one channel, or channel -1, and it will go to draw to all 8 channels at once, that kind of thing. And that's all handy, so don't worry about that too much. Think of it as GDI for this purposes. It's low-level drawing. So the beat effect base has the notion of, just like I should say, failed attempt at the VU meter. This is a little formal compared to what I type live. It's going to keep track of the number of seconds since last beat. I have a helper class called app time that tells me current time, delta time, which is how much frame was, or how much time was spent between frames, and so on. And so it keeps track of the current time, and I subtract when the last beat ever actually occurred. And that way I know when a beat occurs, has the song been saving up for a while? So it's kind of a metric I use to know how important is a beat. There is a couple of things I look at. I look at how loud is the beat, but it's hard to know with an auto-scaling mic as is built into these M5s. So if somebody may have asked, I saw a question about a microphone. I'm not sure if you meant this mic or that mic, or that mic I mean. The mic for the insulators is built into the M5 Stick C, which I'm using. I actually like as a mic, and it's not fair to compare because it's got like a tiny pinhole versus a Max is at 9814, which is a little board that has a mic, and it's also auto gain, but you can adjust some of the responses to the gain, I think, by how you ground certain pins, things like that. And I like that microphone a fair bit better. I've got that in the atomic lamps, and I find they're a little easier to code for beat responsiveness, but they're still really impressive, these M5 sticks, especially because it's built in, and it's pretty well hidden. I mean, it's a rubber casing, and I think it is like a pinhole in the case, so it doesn't, they're not weatherproof, I don't think, but maybe they are. Let me know. Not by washing yours. Okay. So the beat effect has the notion of a high latch, a low latch, and an elapsed time. And as I mentioned, the elapsed time is how long that it must be since the last beat before a new beat can be generated. I think I did the math, and I think that we did that in the one live stream where quarter notes turn out to be somewhere around 1/8 of a second, which is 0.125. So I've said you have to be 0.120 by default. So I'm trying to hit quarter notes as the minimum beat duration as the default. Next, the VU, which is tracked in that GVU value, actually no, GVU ratio is the one that you actually want to pay attention to. I do the calculation and I map it to 0 to 2. And why 0 to 2? Well, I figure that way you can multiply things by it. So if you have an effect and you want it to get louder when there's loud music, multiply it by VU ratio. If you want to get quieter when it's quiet, multiply it by a GVU ratio. And when it's just normal middle of the road volume, it will be 1.0. So you can again multiply it. So it just simplified some of the math and stuff. What the low latch and the high latch are is to say a beat has occurred when the VU has gone, or the VU ratio has gone below a value, like 0.5, and then gone back above another higher value, like 1.5. And I believe the defaults are 1.0 and 1.0, which makes it really sensitive because that says whenever the VU ratio crosses the middle. So if it goes below, it latches, and then when it goes back above, it fires. We'll see that code right here. So if the elapsed is less than the minimum elapsed time, can't do anything yet, bail. If the VU ratio is lower than the low latch, then say, yeah, we're latched. We're ready to fire when we go back above the high latch. Now, if we're latched and the VU ratio goes above the high latch, then when we crest above that latch point, we're going to call handle beat within the class, and we'll keep track of, now that is the last beat that's ever occurred, and we're no longer latched because we just fired. And that's really all this code has to do. And handle beat does nothing, it just prints some debug stuff, but when you derive from this class, all you do in your effect is implement handle beat, and you can draw to your strip, and that's what this effect does. So when a beat occurs, it creates a particle. In this case, it's a little more complicated, this effect, but it responds to the handle beat function. I'm going to take a second here and check my comments. What keyboard are you using? Again, it's a Corsair. I think it's a K70 is the one. It's their RGB unit with the volume control, the full-size RGB unit with No, I'm not going to risk holding it up because I'll probably pull a cable out and crash the whole thing. But it is Corsair, I believe, K70 with the volume control and the numeric keypad. Oh yeah, no, quarter notes don't have a defined duration. I was assuming 132 because I don't listen to 144. Or did I do it at 120? I forget. I did it at like 120, 132, 144. I did it one of the slower rates you would find for normal pop music, and I assumed that, and then I did quarter notes in that tempo because I don't know anything about music. All right. If we go look one level deeper, before we go, let's see. This is the beat effect bass. Is there anything more interesting in here? I don't think so. So the particle system effect gets a little fancy because it's a template and so on, but it basically says you're going to create a particle system, and I don't really need to know much about it except that you have a drawable particle, and I'll know to call render on it when I need to draw it. So that's what this says in terms of the type that you're defining it to be. Hi, I'm live, by the way. That's what that sticker means. Thanks. And yeah, I put a sticker on the door that says live, and people look at it, and then they walk in. But what are you going to do? LED strip effect. So all particles. This drawable particle, regardless, you don't need to know too much about it. Does it tell me in a pop-up? No. Let's go look at it. Pretty predictable. It implements draw. So that's all your particle needs to do. Can I get back to where I was? Yes. Good. So every time it goes to draw the particle system, it's going to run through this DQ. I don't know how you say it. DQ, whatever it is. A Q, but DQ'd. It's going to run through them as long as there's any particles in it, and as long as the age of the front particle is greater than the total lifetime for a particle, then we're going to pop it off and throw it away. Otherwise, as long as the number of particles that are in there are greater than the number of LEDs, which I determined to be more than you could ever reasonably draw, then throw that away too. Otherwise, once you're done that pruning, go through from the beginning to the end, and this is using the STL iterators if they look a little different from beginning to end, and just call render on each particle. If we go call render, I thought it was draw. What the heck, man? And I can't step into it. Oh wait, maybe I can. It's taking its time. 12 of 15 files parsed. Come on, 13. 13 files parsed. All right, I'm going to have to do this old school with text. So this is a ring particle. And this is a good example because what this is actually drawing into an insulator and drawing in a circular ring. So a lot of these, the spinning rings, all of these are going to draw a ring particle. So this is kind of an intermediate base class. And this is kind of the last thing I got time to look at in this episode, but it'll give you a sense of how the particles are drawn. When it comes in, render figures out what insulator it's on. Does this check for -1? Yes, I think it does. Oh, it just passes it through by here. Okay, so it gets the object color, which fades out over time because that's all calculated automatically by the base classes. The particles track their lifetime, and they have it's kind of funny because I sort of invented attack, decay, sustain, release without knowing it because, again, I don't know anything about music, but I follow the star model. There's a pre-ignition, and then it fires into ignition, and then it goes through a lifetime, and then it has the decay cycle at the end. And you can define the length and then what happens in each of those. And so, for example, I have one that does a hot iron look, which does hot white iron, and then it fades through the yellow and orange and red color spectrum. So you can do sort of a tungsten light bulb fade out on it. It looks kind of neat, but that's what that's for. And if not, if you're just doing blue, it just fades your blue over time. Num fans, as I mentioned last time we did this, is the same as number of insulators. So it goes through all 5 of them. And this is if -1 has been passed, which means a major beat. it fills all the rings with that color. If it's not, it just fills the ring of that particular insulator. And this is how you change those lifetimes. Pre-ignition time, there isn't in this case. It's going to fire right on the beat. Ignition time, you get to define that as a variable. Hold time, I'm just always going to do 0. It's going to start fading immediately as soon as the beat fires. And fade time is however long you define for that beat. Normally what I've been doing on my beat effects is to say that the beat should last roughly as long as it has been since the last beat. And that way if you get into, not like a drum solo necessarily, but something like that, with the repetitive beat, each beat is the right amount of time, and it looks pretty good. So when I figured out the music side of my system, I will, and if people know the answer to my question on content ID and how not to get copyright strikes, so basically, let me reiterate the question. What I would like is some mechanism by which I can find out what are the restrictions on a song under content ID? Is it restricted in some regions? Does it just mean that I have to give up the revenue, which is fine? Does it mean I get a copyright strike? Those are kind of the 3 outcomes that are possible for any song. And I have no idea, short of making a dummy video and then uploading it unlisted and then waiting to see what YouTube does with it, which I could certainly do. And I don't want to resort to that because it's kind of manual and time consuming. But if there's a better way, like a web form that I can type in the names of a song and find out, that'd be great. Please let me know. Let me check questions really before I go. Yeah, an LED sign. Yeah, I've got one that does my subscriber count, which is, can you see it? No, unfortunately you can't, but not from this vantage point. What color should be? Red. The problem with the subscriber sign, sorry I'm getting randomized in my head there, is that it does not work as live as I would like it to be. It used to be that you could get a pretty live subscriber count. Now it's delayed by a day, basically, if you're using any of the APIs. And so again, if you know how to get a really good live subscriber count, I would love to make my LED sign that I have for it be really live. So let me know that in the comments as well. So until we do this again next time, and I'm trying to do this quite a bit more frequently just to get some practice at it, because it is all kind of new to me, obviously. As you can tell, I've probably left myself without like the code up for half the episode or something nonsensical. We'll find out when I go back and watch it and learn from it. So until then, in the meantime and in between time, I hope to see you next time, right here in Dave's Garage.